Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, Ty Lee. And Ty, we once again are talking about the massive game on Saturday, OU Texas, the Red River Rivalry, Red River Shootout. And, I feel like there's been a lot of hype on our end, a lot of optimism. The Longhorns, they're not looking great. They're 3-2. I don't know. I feel like we know we see some stuff from the outside, but we obviously need to see how bad it is from the inside. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. And yeah, there's always an opportunity to get maybe some inside perspective for our Sooner fans, or perhaps any Longhorn fans that are listening to this. Maybe we get some friendly perspective for you that you can relate to and sort of see just how the fan bases are both feeling about this game. Because I will say we're confident as OU fans, but backup quarterback for OU worries me. Mateer, if he does play, that worries me even more because I'm worried that he's going to get re-hurt, and then all of a sudden, we're in a much worse position for much longer. So there's a lot to talk about. And yeah, Texas, I think, has also been obviously not to expectations. So interesting to dive in.
Yeah, and so if you've been following our show for a while, we have a pretty much yearly tradition of bringing on our good friend Chris Ilenstine to talk from the Texas side of things. Take off the crimson colored glasses a little bit and kind of see, see this kind of the other side of the Red River. I think this is always one of my favorite pods. It helps kind of balance everything out. But look, enough talking. There's only one thing left to do. Give me a fat beat. That's right. It's that time of year again where we bring back Chris Ilenstine to talk a little bit of Texas, give us a little bit of perspective here. Chris, welcome back onto the show. Always good hearing from you. And outside of the 3-2, how have you been?
Doing great otherwise. Just taking care of a brand new puppy, so that's always fun. But the Longhorns not doing so great so far this year.
Yeah, obviously 3-2. We kind of mentioned before this is a bit of a different tenor, entering this game. The past couple years, past 3 seasons, Oklahoma has looked pretty poor entering the game. A lot of question marks, and 2 of the 3 years they've fallen completely flat. So definitely a bit different. Texas still the favorite at 1.5 last time I checked. So how are you feeling entering this game? Like, what's your general vibe as a Texas fan?
Well, first off, I think the line is a bit weird. I know it opened at 2.5. It's moved to 1.5, but with the news that Mateer is sort of like on the fence, leaning towards maybe playing if possible, I think it's a bit of a weird line, and I think it probably moves in OU's favor before kickoff. But I'm not really feeling great about this, especially with the way the Florida game just happened last week, where the defense was the strong suit for the first few games of the year. And then now the defense looked like it had some holes in it, which obviously doesn't complement the struggles that have been on offense so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick on the line, I know I've been seeing kind of the same funkiness. I actually saw a couple different people sort of out there reporting. I think the primary one I saw in terms of a reputable name was Josh Pate, saying that he had spoken with some people at the sportsbook that sponsors his show. And they were saying that they would look to actually move closer to 5.5-ish if Mateer did not play. And the 1.5 is reflective of Mateer playing. So yeah, it's one of those sort of head scratchers of a line for I think a lot of reasons. Obviously they are, as we'll get into, probably very heavily weighting OU's, frankly, anemic offense, sometimes even when Mateer is on the field. So, you're not getting 100% Mateer no matter what. So I guess I can see how Texas is favored there, but it's certainly a bit confusing. And yeah, a line that I think we all expect to be, probably by the time we record the weekend spread tomorrow, to be moved. And will probably move before Saturday as well, because someone's going to see Mateer practicing if he's going to play. So we'll certainly see how that stuff moves.
I assume it's got to be at least a little bit the way Michigan and Auburn were originally thought of before the season starts. And then I think this is kind of, it seems like OU core every year where they beat a team that's really heavily or highly ranked at the beginning of the year. And then it turns out they're not so good. Because what I saw from Michigan and Auburn is like, they're not very good. They're middle of their conference. And I think maybe sports books are just saying maybe they don't necessarily know what OU 100% is until they start playing, the second half of the season, especially with the stretch of games that come even after Texas.
Yeah, and I think it's the Michigan thing's an interesting thing to judge because I feel like, and Jameson has mentioned this on the pod, and I do kind of agree with him, that they have improved since that game in Norman. I think that any version of Michigan you see down the line, a little bit different than that night. And it is tricky. It is tricky to kind of judge that. Granted, I've felt great about the Sooners the entire season. That Auburn game was, I think dicey at times, but overall, I don't know. It felt like that Auburn win was had a little bit more legs to it than last year's Auburn win against Peyton Thorne and co. Where he kind of pulled out a miracle. So I don't know. It is hard to judge, but I feel like you don't really know a team an OU team or a Texas team until you get through this Red River game. I feel like this is where you, like, regardless of conference, regardless of year, who you've played, this is where you really understand both of these units.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we have a really good sense of OU's defense at this point. I think I wrote down they're currently number 1 overall defense across college football. And so I think, like we already mentioned, Oklahoma's big question is, does Hawkins improve on last year's Red River if he plays, or if Mateer plays? I think the big question is, like, what is the actual extent? Is this a miracle doctor, or God forbid, are they sort of rushing him into a game because of the weight of the game, when it's kind of a disservice to him? We really don't know what his hand is actually like until Ty mentioned maybe somebody catches a glimpse of it at practice. I think we probably get a better idea by about Thursday. Yeah.
And the practice thing's interesting. So the past few days, it's actually been really nice in Oklahoma, weather pretty solid. And the Sooners have been practicing in the indoor. So suspiciously, we have not been able to, nobody's been able to see it, no OU Daily folks.
No press allowed.
No one peeking through, the hedges.
No camera people on towers.
Right. And they're a lot smarter now than they were kind of in the Lincoln Riley era, where, people were able to literally look at practice, through the dorms. So a little bit different. But I feel like this is going to be a situation where we're not going to see Mateer until kickoff. We won't know. Dylan Gabriel a couple years ago, we had question marks with him and his concussion. Fully dressed, went through warm-ups, and then Davis Bevel comes out, and it was a disaster. So I'm not gonna believe in Mateer showing up until I see him under center, snap number 1. But if he can go and go at a high level where he can actually produce, I think that obviously changes quite a bit. He's a hell of a quarterback, and a guy, by the way, Chris, you kind of got somewhat familiar with him before OU fans because of your ties with Washington State. So what has your opinion on Mateer been kind of overall, from then to now?
I mean, it's sad for me as a childhood Washington State fan because he kind of appeared out of the woodworks because he sat behind Cam Ward for a couple years, and then he had 1 year and it was like, oh my God, Wazoo has a quarterback that can run and throw the ball, not like a statue in the pocket, like before Cam Ward, a lot of quarterbacks had been. But I think you see a lot of the same things. I think, talented arm, ability to rush. I think we've seen this even with Oklahoma, where he has sometimes where he makes these decisions where he's throwing in the coverage and sometimes it doesn't get picked and you're like, oh, that was a close one. And really, I think the big thing that's a question mark is OU seems to rush him a lot. And I think whether he's injured in this one or his health down the rest of the season, it's like, can OU afford to keep rushing him 20 times as like a pivotal piece of their offense, which he's good at, don't get me wrong, but it takes a toll on everybody by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a question for you, Chris. Let's throw in a surprise one, I guess, to make it fun. But out of the two OU quarterbacks, Michael Hawkins Jr. and John Mateer, I think easy choice there. And then we'll say Arch Manning, and then we'll say not Quinn Ewers. Let's say Sam Ehlinger. Which one would you rather have on your team? Assume all are 100% to reality, not 100% to
I'm only
hype.
between the two Texas ones, obviously.
Yeah. So would you rather have Sam Ehlinger?
I think for this game, I
Arch
might
Manning?
take Ehlinger, just if it's like a 1 game only rental.
Yeah.
I don't know, because he had like a little magic for a game. Obviously, not really like an NFL prototype or anything, but if he needs to win you 1 game in college, from what I've seen out of Arch, it's hard to say, especially since last year. It seems like the few games he started last year, he looks completely different. Granted, those weren't against very good opponents, but something's off with his arm. I think I wrote this down as well. I'm not sure if it's like he's hiding an injury or somebody coached him in the offseason and changed his throwing motion, because he looks like he's throwing a lot more sidearm, and it also looks like he kind of throws like off his feet, like he's not planting his feet, and it sort of causes these balls to fly over people's heads or hit the dirt, and I'm not really sure how to fix it at this point. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is this situation as bad as people are making it out to be? In the New York Times today, you have, is Arch Manning the first bust in college football, which makes no sense. Of course there have been busts in college football.
Yeah, that's
like
unbelievable. Yeah, that's unbelievably insulting, I have to say, to DJU, who was a bust at 3 different schools. So gosh. That's just, absolute shame.
So I guess the question is, we almost get conflicting stories. Like all the talk in the pregame show before Ohio State, Texas was, he's so cool, calm and collected. He showed no nerves in his interviews with the Fox people. He's ready to go. He's got his swag. And then he goes out there and he just looks terrified, like a lost deer in the middle of the forest. And then he's looked like not even really good against some of these lesser non-conference. He had a good game against Sam Houston, but I've come down to, it's either a hidden shoulder injury or somebody coached him and changed his throwing motion, and now he doesn't have confidence, and it's a weird spot to be in.
Yeah, it's all just so weird. And I know that some OU fans to some degree were like, oh, he's overrated, he just played in like 3A Louisiana or whatever. But it's beyond that. It's beyond that. It's really just odd to me that it's this bad, that you have to subscribe to something like it being an injury or a change in motion or whatever. But I will say this: I've been watching OU football long enough to know that it would be just our luck for him to put it all together randomly in the Cotton Bowl. I've seen Case McCoy tear us apart, for God's sake. So, in my opinion, you're like, there's half of your OU brain that's like, we're gonna sack Arch 12 times, but another half that's like, this guy's gonna somehow show up and like look like Arch Manning for the first time this season.
I'll say this: there's multiple levels that are gonna have to happen to fix this, because it's also, number one, not a good look that Sark is the offensive mastermind, and the offense has been, no question about it, the weakest part of the team so far. And there's offensive line issues because they only had 1 returning starter, and the offensive line does not look good. However, when I watched Florida, they put a lot of the blame on the offensive line, but I was literally counting how long it would take him to like throw the ball or make a decision. And I swear to God, he would wait 5 to 6 seconds and then get sacked. And I'm like, that's not on the offensive line. Like, if it's not there, you have to do something. So I expect that at least part of the fix in this one is going to be maybe some short passes, probably a lot of screens and things, just to like get the ball away from him and the offensive line, if that is a big question mark against OU's defense, which is really good.
Yeah,
go ahead. You got it, Ty.
I was going to say, just purely speculation, it really does make you think, at least from what I remember of the things that Sark said about Arch Manning for the past couple of years, if this might be a situation where, and again, pure speculation, but I could see a world where Sark never actually really believed in Arch, and the institution of Texas has kind of put it on it. Because like, if you think back to last year, every time anyone would ask, it was always, he pretty firmly in a bunch of different ways was saying that he didn't believe that he was anywhere near ready, and it didn't really matter how bad.
Ewers.
Not Sam Ellinger, Quinn Ewers, yeah, one of those E names was performing. Yeah, he was still going to be much better, and obviously in coach speak and very politically, but it does kind of make me wonder if this is kind of a situation that the boosters and the admin have put themselves in, making such a big deal out of this, and now you've made your bed, and Sark didn't really get a say in that. Not to come on here and defend Sark, but
yeah, I mean, it's not the most outlandish thing I've heard, because there's been like an eerie amount of press, especially before the season, just hyping Arch up to the point where it's almost like any quarterback, no matter who they were, couldn't succeed in this sort of situation when there's just so much hype around someone that had only come in a few games and started a couple games the season prior. I'm not really sure what to make of it. Yeah, Sark last year was very firmly like, Ewers is our guy, until he absolutely had to do something at the Georgia game because it was getting out of hand early.
Yeah, and that didn't help either.
No.
Had to go back with Ewers. Yeah. Yeah, that was an insane week, because for OU fans, you just got beat down. You had F1, in town. Dua Lipa's wearing like the Texas jersey at ACL. It was like the Texas was the capital of the sports and just everything world for like a week. And it was just like, I swear, if they beat Georgia, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to crawl under a rock and just not care about sports for a while. So, anyways, I want to talk about Texas's offense a little bit more. So you've touched on the O-line a bit. The receiving core, obviously pretty stacked last year. A little bit different this year. What are some of the big weapons to kind of look out for? How's that unit been this season?
So the receiving core is still stacked. It's more of a question of, does the ball actually arrive anywhere in their vicinity for them to catch? Parker Livingston, who's actually Arch Manning's roommate, if you didn't know that, and Arch threw him a ball last week that almost blew his knee entirely out. He's sort of a tall threat. I think he's only a sophomore. You probably know Ryan Wingo. He's returning. DJ Moore. I think DJ, or is that the Bears? DeAndre or DJ?
Bear, yeah. DeAndre Moore. DJ's with the Bears, yeah.
DeAndre Moore, excuse me. And then there's a new, tight end, Jack Andrews from Cal. He's a transfer. He's been really good. And then there's a Stanford transfer who played a little bit against Florida, so he's just returning from injury, Emmett Mosley the fifth, and he's another like very big target. I think he's probably 6'3", 6'4", if I had to guess. But they have plenty of weapons. It's just a matter of like, are we scheming something that actually puts Arch in a position to get the ball out to these skilled players and let them get yards after catch and not be reliant on this super young offensive line trying to hold up for a quarterback with no confidence.
I will say there's a couple things there that jump out to me as an OU fan. One, where's the money for Arch going? Why does he have a roommate? Doesn't he make like $10 million a year? Something needs to be investigated there.
I do want to note too,
before a legitimate problem.
I do want to note, by the way, that the roommate point. The second you brought up a star Texas quarterback and his roommate, I'm sure there are a lot of OU fans who immediately thought of Colt McCoy and Jordan Shipley, and how every 5 seconds they're like, "Oh, by the way, they're roommates. Did y'all know?"
Yeah,
you have like the nightmare of the kickoff return at the same time in your head.
Yeah, the 45-35 game. Yeah, genuinely one of the biggest gut punch plays I've ever seen in Red River.
Right before it happens, they're like, the weakness of this OU team is the special teams. That's about the only weakness they have, and then returns a kickoff.
They were so bad that year. It was
Yeah, and then just real quick, the other thing that jumped out to me as an OU fan was I didn't know that there were Cal transfers that actually performed well, but I guess that's just not at OU. So
I'm not in scouting, but I guess maybe there's always one or two stars on a team that's just on a really crappy team and they're dying to get somewhere else.
yeah,
Well,
well,
that's what we thought we had with Jaden Mott.
Yeah, we threw the bag at their star running back last year, and he's done 50 yards in garbage time last week. Well, not garbage. The whole game was garbage time last week. So that's all we've gotten for a couple mil.
But if I bring your attention to something, the receiving core is stacked as last year. They should perform, assuming they can get passes on time and accurate. The big thing has been the rush game, the running offense, where it's an interesting situation where Arch is the leading rusher. However, there are 4 running backs with over 100 yards, which is obviously not a lot of yards for 5 games into the season. It's really a weird situation where it's just running back by committee, like 4 or 5 different backs. And then last week, they just could not run the ball at all with the offensive line. So that's another point of it's a very big issue going into this week, obviously, with the defense.
Which is weird because I know y'all still have Wisner, I believe, right? So
yeah, he was injured for like the first game or two, so his numbers are a little skewed because he's only played a couple games.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That just makes me more curious about this line because even the game line, that is, because even with OU presumably going to be really struggling to move the ball at all, it's just I feel like you've seen enough from this OU defense against, again, guys that haven't lived up to potential, like Jackson Arnold and like Bryce Underwood, but still, I am much more frightened about being able to keep Bryce Underwood or Jackson Arnold contained than I am Arch Manning at this point, frankly. So it is a little confusing to me, again, to hear that Texas really struggles on the ground. I guess maybe if you're Vegas, you're just looking to ignore that anyways because you just feel that the OUD line is going to kind of contain that no matter what. But I don't know. Again, this pod is always funny to me because it's both sides are always so apprehensive getting into it, right? Like the fan bases love to talk their crap online and stuff, but when you start to really get into an actual discussion, yeah, everyone's like, I don't know. No one is ever confident going into the Red River game if they're a rational person.
Well, I was talking to Bobby before we started recording. Like, this is probably, and we'll get into predictions and all that stuff, but this is the first year I've probably been more apprehensive than the year when Dylan Gabriel won. I was very confident that Texas was going to go in there and smash them. Last year, I was a little more worried because of the year before, but I felt really confident. And this year, it's hard to see a path to win, but we can get into all that later. But I feel like they're very much being disrespectful to Oklahoma with the line, if I'm being honest.
Wow. Yeah. And I think it's the line is interesting, and I don't want to loop all the way back to that once. We'll get to it when we get to predictions, but I think to me, kind of flipping, the stage here, that OU offense is such a question mark to me with Hawkins. He didn't look great against Kent State. Still had some confidence issues. Wasn't hitting his throws quite right.
Receiver into a brick wall, basically.
Yes, that was not good.
That was
literally.
Everyone is
not
like,
good.
Why is there a brick wall 5 yards or less behind the end zone?
Yeah. The real question should have been, why was the pass 10 yards behind the end zone? That's
that too. Yeah.
The real question.
Well, the answer is nobody's ever thrown.
Yeah, no, you should be throwing the ball over there. But
that wall's been in place since 1949, and I guess that's the first time anyone's ever run into the wall.
Even throwing passes back.
Before they had helmets. Just to clarify, reports are that he is okay. That's why we're joking about it now. But
yes,
good.
Yes, well, he is okay.
Michael Hawkins Jr. is not okay as a talent, but the Keontae Lewis is okay.
Yeah, but I feel like the OU offense or the OU defense is obviously their strength, but I feel like that's the same case with Texas as well. And I feel like anytime you talk about the Longhorns overall, especially over the years, there's always been an emphasis on, Sarkisian's offense. And I get it. It's flashy. It's fun. But that defense is as good of a unit as there is in the country. It's stacked. And I feel like this year is, more of the same from what I understand.
Yeah. So Texas currently has the number 13 defense. Before Florida, I think it was 3 or 5. It was a top 5. So my question that I guess we'll figure out once game time starts was the Florida game just a fluke because they couldn't really stop the run? And then when Florida really needed a pass, they had that big pass down the sideline near the end of the game, and they just could not really quite get a stop when Texas sort of finally found a rhythm on offense. But to answer your question, from a paper perspective, Texas is still stacked on defense. Pretty much every level. There's Anthony Hill Jr. is a signal calling linebacker. They reloaded the D line with transfers. They still have Finkley and Collins, I think, like edge rushers. Michael Taft returning All-American, former walk-on safety. You'll probably hear about him if you haven't already. But in theory, they're loaded on every step of the way. So it's I think it'll be a very interesting. I think it's just going to be about both offenses for this game, because I did note that neither offense is in the top 50 for total offense. So according to NCAA's website. So it depends on who's playing quarterback with Oklahoma, and then can they do something on offense? Because as we mentioned, Texas's offense is a question mark at this point.
Yeah. I feel like one of the edges OU has on offense is the offensive line at times has been excellent. It looked really good against Michigan. It looked pretty solid against Auburn. There have been a couple, if you watch the tape in some of the bad games, you'll definitely see some gnarly stuff. But overall, I feel like that is definitely an edge for OU there. Obviously tough task with Texas's D line. But I think that's something that can help OU here. And overall, the game to me is about turnovers, and not to just try to boil it down to something simple or, get a little too Alex Grinchy here. But in a game, in an atmosphere this intense, it's who's going to screw up the most. And when you do screw up, how are you going to respond? And, I think it's tricky to judge which team's going to do that more often, even with Mateer, because we've seen he'll make a mistake or two, with interceptions or fumbles. And, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see how it all pans out, but it's
potentially Mateer with lower than normal grip strength as well. Assuming he does play. So I agree fully. The turnovers is the thing, because like Chris was saying, it's really going to be a defensive matchup, even though obviously one of these teams is billed as sort of the offensive team. On OU side, we want the offense to be much better. We obviously expected the offense to be much better, but we have been billed as the defensive team. So we're at least doing that. But for me, I don't see a world realistically where you can count on. I think we would be very lucky, very, very lucky to see 24 points out of this OU offense. I think that's like a ceiling from the offense. So I really think that Texas is going to look like they have an easier time moving the ball, just because, again, like our offenses, we've struggled. We've had some receivers step up, but like one of our leading pass catchers is just a converted linebacker who was and he's been really solid. Like not to diminish it. Yeah, he's an absolute baller. He's great on the team, but like it is
one
a
of the
bit
best
alarming.
tight ends in college football somehow.
It is a bit alarming when one of your leading dudes was a guy who just kind of offered in the offseason to move over from linebacker. But I think turnovers are going to be crucial in this one.
He had one of the best Instagram captions of all time after moving positions. He said, "The haters said I couldn't play linebacker. The haters were right."
Exactly. So that's certainly worrisome. And I think I would love to see, and this is 50% an Arch Manning joke, but I think I'd love to see a sports book where I can get a bet that Arch Manning throws the touchdown pass to both teams. Because I think the path forward for OU is, I think there's going to be some explosive plays on the air, because Arch can just magically get it in there sometimes. And I would love to see, I said on the other pod, probably one you didn't listen to, Chris, is maybe we have a scenario where Arch is playing all-time quarterback, and it's just OU's constantly going 3 and out, and then Arch is like, here's a touchdown pass for Texas, here's a touchdown pass for OU, here's a touchdown pass for Texas, and we just see how long that goes on.
Maybe you want to check DraftKings for that one. Usually have some funny markets.
Yeah.
Yeah, whip up a weird little parlay, like Arch Manning to, one passing touchdown, or
I guess maybe you could SGP it somehow with like a pick 6 and then also more than one passing touchdown.
Yeah, you could fiddle with it, but
to Ty's point, I think he really outlined probably pretty well what we're going to see the game look like, because both teams also happen to be near the bottom of at least the top 50 or worse on third down conversions. And so you have ugly offense from both teams, incredible defenses. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game. And again, I got some predictions for later, but I think I think part of it also might come down to how does Texas play now that they're unranked? Does that remove a little pressure? Because I tend to like underdogs a lot of times in rivalry games, at least when they're like closely matched, not like, a huge difference, but because Texas in reality needs this a lot more than OU does if they want any chance at college football playoff. So maybe it comes down to who's playing with more urgency through this one.
Yeah, the corner dog in this rivalry game has played well in the past, especially when that dog is Texas. We've seen Charlie Strong, wiggle his way out of tough games, like when Tyrone swoops, for God's sakes, like they
Wheeler package.
Yeah. That Case McCoy game I was talking about, that was like a Mac Brown last stand situation. I obviously Sarkisian is nowhere near the hot seat. I don't think, anyways. I mean, surely Texas fans aren't that upset, but it's college football, so you never know. But Texas definitely. I mean, this is it, because you can talk about a 3-loss SEC team making the playoffs. With Texas's general schedule, that doesn't feel like one that would be super amenable if you lose to Oklahoma and try to run the table. You just don't have enough top 25 games to claw back, I don't think.
Not unless they look absolutely magical at Georgia, which is that really like, I mean, Georgia's not as good as they've been in the past, but still, I mean, come on. And then unless Texas A&M keeps, I mean, they're not bad either, but unless they're like a top 10, top 5 team somehow, and then you win that one. But if they're not making the SEC conference game, I'm not really sure how they get a path in at 3 games.
I will say the absolute sick thing is that Texas is right back in the top 15 if they win this one. You just know it, which is disgusting in the media.
That's what makes the line so funny, is it's number 5 Oklahoma and unranked, and it's 1.5 the unranked team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just had another real quick note to say is I think, yes, Texas as the university, as the program right now, their back is definitely more against the wall in this one. But for me, I think a very, very, very important thing to consider, and this is big, it's big in college football right now. You see it driving the discussions with, obviously, Ryan Day just won a national championship, but in years past, Ryan Day, other Texas coaches in years past, but Brent Venables, I think, is much more cornered with his record in this game. It's, again, a little bit of personal vendetta, but like you're still hanging on to the worst loss in the history of the series. You've played it 3 times. You're 1-2 in that. One of those, again, extremely embarrassing. One, obviously, magical win with Dylan Gabriel.
Two extremely embarrassing.
Two
two
of the worst losses in the series.
River. Yeah. Every time you lose Red River, it's extremely embarrassing.
We forget the loss margin, the margin of a victory for Texas last year was one of their largest in the history of the rivalry. So he's wearing 2 real bad scarlet letters there. And then if you want to keep tacking on other games, you can add on, that, last Bedlam and, go beyond that, like with some just tough losses. But, Venables, I mean, this is a. I don't want to say this is a like if OU doesn't win this game, then we're gonna fire Brent and he's back on the hot seat. But if OU gets embarrassed at the Cotton Bowl, it's gonna be bad again. So
it's just the nature of the business. Like you can have, say he stacked up 5-10 win seasons in a row, but you lose one of your most important games every year. That's what people stick to.
Yeah, not only that, it's the business at Oklahoma, and that's something Switzer has said forever. That's something Stoops has said is, when I got the job, they said, look, the only thing you got to do is beat Texas and, beat Texas and beat Nebraska. And it matters a ton. So I think it's going to be a situation where both teams are desperate. Anytime you go in that Cotton Bowl, it has a way of just kind of, everything outside of that in the world of college football, the rankings, the line, all that just kind of fades away, and it just doesn't matter. Like both teams are just even somehow, most times, but it just feels different. So I think in terms of pressure, I mean, it's on both of them for sure. Chris, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. Do you think this is a trap game for Oklahoma now?
No.
Since I'd want to flip the talking points and sort of create a spin zone here, because now that Texas is not ranked and OU still has quite a few tough games upcoming, are they potentially looking ahead to these tough games in the SEC schedule and forgetting that it's still a rival?
I don't think you can look ahead past Texas, especially when you're at OU. I know to some degree it's a, call an ambulance, but not for me sort of situation. But especially given what happened last year and in years past, Texas still has their golden hat. You want to get that back. You want to flip the script on that. And two, like there's an element of if you're 5-0 and you lose to this, like a 3-2 struggling UT team, that's going to be a little bit of egg on your face. Texas. I know that I truly feel like they're significantly better than what we've seen this season, and it's going to show. Surely it's going to show at some point, but it would be embarrassment. So I think, to me, I don't think there's any way you can look past it. And if you do, you're at the wrong school.
And then, oh, sorry, Ty, go ahead.
No, I was going to broadly echo what Bobby was saying, and just mention that one thing I think that did come up in my mind when you asked that was I tend to value teams' records, or feel like I almost know them better when they have lost. And I think for Texas, obviously their season has already begun, and OU has played some tough games. Like, don't get me wrong, we've played some absolute quality opponents, some quality talent, but you do kind of get the feeling, like you're saying, and like maybe Vegas is baking into this line of this might be functionally week one for this OU team, especially when you look at the schedule that we have coming up. I mean, the easiest game we have coming up after this is going to South Carolina, which is a team that played us close last year. And they're scrappy at home. We've seen that for a couple years now under Coach Beamer. And then, top 4 team in the nation in Ole Miss, going to Tennessee, going to Alabama, facing a Mizzou team, and then facing a LSU team to round the season out. It certainly does feel like, to some extent, this is a tale of 2 seasons for OU, and we will really see what's going to happen in this one. So with that, I don't think you can look ahead. I think OU realizes that, like, it's big boy time now.
And to your point, I think when you look at the 2 losses, I don't know if you guys probably watched all the Ohio State versus Texas game, but even though Arch looked really bad, that team competed so much harder than the Florida game. It was a very winnable game. It came down like right to the wire, and everyone wanted to say how good Julian, what's his name, Sayans or whatever is, but they had 2 drives down the field, but he was effectively useless for most of the game too. So if we get that sort of Texas defense in this game and plug in some sort of piece, or like plug Arch back into the outlet, or like whatever needs to happen, then I think it's going to be a very different Texas team than last week. But I have a sort of tie hypothetical for you maybe. Would you rather rent Mateer for this one game, rent as in like you get him for this game, but he gets injured and he's out the rest of the season and you win this game, or you take Hawkins, you lose Red River, but then you get Mateer the rest of the season?
I know my answer. I've said it kind of, around the time Mateer got hurt. You absolutely take the back half. I want to beat Texas as much as anyone, but especially in this world of, being able to take multiple losses in college football, still being able to make the playoff and still having all of your goals ahead of you. Texas is an acceptable loss, that especially without Mateer, because, the committee loves to look at that stuff and kind of hand wave. So I think it's an easy answer of you would rather have Mateer for the back half for some intense, brutal games, even with the loss. Now I hate Texas. That would suck. I'm not saying that would be easy by any means.
Texas.
What's that?
Secretly loves Texas though at the same time.
No. Look, I can't be a sleeper agent for OSU and Texas now. Come on. But no, it just would have to be the back half for sure.
Yeah, the two oranges clash too much. You can't do the burnt and the brightest. It just doesn't work. I think that's kind of what I was hinting at, and that's a very legitimate concern. I feel like for some people, and especially for me, is that potential risk of re-injury. And obviously, we don't have the actual diagnosis. Obviously, we don't have actually what's going on, but. It's like Bobby kind of alluded to, you always have that sort of talking point of, oh, hey, like we didn't have our starting quarterback. But to me, right, I'm working off the assumption right now that Michael Hawkins will be the quarterback for this game. Frankly, I think if Mateer does play, it's not the whole game. I think we might get like one or two series or something, and we get like a quarterback by committee thing. Would not surprise me at all. I know the other guys on the Schooner Pod were kind of anti that, but for me, I don't think this game is an auto loss with Michael Hawkins. I think you saw the line when Mateer wasn't playing opened at 2.5, 3.5, so it's still very close. I think OU absolutely can win this game with Michael Hawkins. I think there's 60% of the time, in my mind, OU wins this game with Michael Hawkins. So I would much rather preserve Mateer because, again, like it's, I don't want to lose to South Carolina either, but I would lose to South Carolina if it meant that, we get to face a still top 4 or top 10 Ole Miss team coming into town and can host that wonderful crowd and show off Norman to the world and maybe College Game Day and win. And then, being able to go into Tennessee, a place that we haven't played since 2015 with Baker, and pull off a win there in front of over 100,000 people would be tremendous. And it's going to get, so many eyeballs. And then being able to go into Tuscaloosa, unfortunately, for Alabama, maybe not the best coach over there. They did have a chance of winning that game earlier in the season when it looked like we were going to be facing some sort of interim head coach. But, there's a lot of those other games. I think this is an OU team that, not to be too homery, but has legitimate postseason potentially with the way the SEC pans out. And God, I almost hate that I said that now, because now I'm kind of playing into this inadvertently. Some of these regular season games don't necessarily matter because it's all about the postseason. But I think at the same time, there's no world where Red River doesn't matter. I mean, if you're going to win, if you can say I can win one game this year, like I know Texas or I know OU is only going to win one game this year, which one do you want to lock in? Every true OU and Texas fan is locking in Red River as their one win. So I don't know. It's a national championship within a national championship.
To your point, I do think it's funny that now Oklahoma does have legitimate playoff aspirations. And when looking at the preseason lines, I actually told my boss when he was trying to put in all of his like futures that he wanted to for the year. And I was like, I don't remember if they were at 6.5 wins or something. And I was like, just take the over. I don't see these wins on the schedule, before the season, but I was like, knowing OU, they're going to find some way to like win through a bunch of these.
If the over was over like 30 back then, you gave him terrible advice if he bet on that.
Oh, well, for the point spread, yeah, but like
no, sorry, the win
he was
total
saying win total.
Oh, the win total. Okay, I thought you meant for the Red River game. I was like, that's atrocious advice.
At like 6.5, and I was like, they're gonna find more wins than that. You know, they just are. So
absolutely.
But one thing Ty did mention, I would think that, again, as I said earlier, it would be sort of a disservice, but I can't imagine a world in which Oklahoma brings Mateer in for like a series or two. That would be sort of a head scratcher to me. Like, is a series or two going to affect the game that much necessarily? Like, what if it's a 3-and-out on one of them? Like,
I see it. Yeah, I see him like starting, and then they're just like, yeah, this was
just
not
like see how it goes, maybe.
So you're predicting that they bring him out there and they change their mind.
Yeah, if they try to put him out there, I think it's going to become apparent that it's just
like
not.
Throws. You don't think they'll go just goes down?
You don't think they'll go snip, snap, snip, snap? Like
no. Well, I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be like a Blake Bell, Trevor Knight those couple seasons when we kind of alter. Like it was like, oh, we're going to do a tush push style set, put in Bell.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, we're going to do something else. Yeah. So
put the man with the broken hand in for a tush push.
Yeah. but the Aaron Rodgers one where he just stands there and goes. That would, if we could do a game-winning tush push where we have John Mateer come in and just trot out and just point, do the big text pose and then point as we get the touchdown, that would be ideal.
That's funny. Austin T in the comments said he expects to see some 2 QB formations, which we actually saw at Washington State. They rolled out Mateer and Ward together a time or two. Old Ben Arbuckle, but I don't know. We'll see. All I know is Arbuckle's going to throw something at this game. Like he's going to throw the kitchen sink at this.
OU, I feel like always does it. I think I've mentioned this on past years, but it's always weird to me. Like even when Texas is favored, I feel like they come out timid and OU comes out like running trick plays, like you said, throwing the kitchen sink at them and doing everything and sort of playing with this swagger and confidence. And Texas sometimes appears on their heels when I'm like, you guys, you are a lot better than them. You're just not playing as the better team that day. Something to think about.
I feel like that happens from time to time, but we'll see.
I think that might be just, to sort of self-dox a little bit. Like we're all kind of late 20s, early 30s. Like that might be just sort of like in our lifetimes, right? You've had guys coaching OU's offense, like Josh Heupel, Mike Leach has been back there, Lincoln Riley. So there's definitely been some tremendous talent that has proliferated across college football that's been calling OU's plays. I don't know if it's necessarily OU is just more inherently hyped up for this game than Texas. I think sometimes there's just legitimate talent. Although I think in general, OU does kind of have the underdog angle a little bit, still not leading the series.
Oh yeah. There's the series aspect and there's just the natural geography of it all. Like just being frank, you kind of have Texas, who's, an enormous state, massive, I mean, Texas is Texas, the bravado, all of that,
you come to our state fair to play.
Exactly. Yeah. And, Oklahoma has always been kind of the scrappy underdog, like as a state forever. So it's always kind of like, there is a little bit of, I don't even know. I don't know the right
I just always describe Oklahoma to people as Texas light.
Well, I hate that. I think there you go. That sums it up, though.
As someone who's originally not from the area, Oklahoma's kind of like Texas, just with a slightly different formula and vibe to it. I don't know.
No, I think that is it is accurate. It's but I think that's what makes this rivalry so great is there's so much just. I think OU fans and Oklahomans just want to beat them so bad to kind of humble those damn Texans. And the Texans are like, we can't let freaking Oklahoma beat us, So there's animosity on both sides. It's a perfect rivalry. Any final questions, Chris, before we move on to predictions?
I think that's all I had. I guess I'm just curious, whether how healthy do you think Mateer? I don't know if you talked to Jameson. Like, what do you think is the real story on the hand? Like, is it possible for a broken hand that occurred maybe 2 weeks ago to be ready for game time?
I'm trying to parse out what he told me behind the scenes of what he knows and doesn't want to go public, and what he, has said. But from what I understand, it's a very unique, interesting situation, and a unique procedure that they kind of figured it out. So it's a weird situation from what I understand with that specific fracture. So from what I understand, it's very much odd. So I don't know. I think I know he thinks it would be reckless to put him out there regardless. But from what I understand, it was a very unique, very specialized procedure. Which I think I think that's as timid as I'm allowed.
There's been a lot of public statements saying the same across general reporting, and it to me, and this is my read off of just reading like social media and general reporting as well, and then a very, 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 very surface level understanding of medicine is again, and I know I keep saying this, but it worries me a little bit, even understanding that maybe the injury was, I guess you could say, like, falls under a certain umbrella, but maybe isn't necessarily as severe or as other people are thinking. And he did receive, I guess, some sort of, like, I want to say novel procedure, but very specialized, very specific procedure. But going to just extreme demands and load from like a engineering of the human body perspective, right? Like, the human body was not meant to throw a football or hold a football as a giant Texas defender tries to strip it away from you, particularly when they're stripping towards that thumb. And then again, being able to grip it. And like we talk about with quarterbacks, like you're speculating with Arch with, is he dealing with some sort of injury? Like, we don't know because, maybe he has been practicing. Obviously it's been the indoor facility, but even just coming back from an injury, like, you don't know how that changed the mechanics and the feel that he's used to, what it feels like to grab that football, and what his very specific, he already has a really unique release is like. All of that stuff worries me. And again, makes me lean towards, Michael Hawkins, even if he is presumably quote unquote 100% healthy. Well, even if he is quote unquote good to play, the risk of re-injury worries me, but then also the risk of, like, there's just no way that you're 100% back to where you were after something like that. It's just one of it, because it's a skilled position with your hands. Like, you're just not playing those notes on the piano the same after the Mafia broke your fingers because you bet the Penn State win total over like a fool and not pay them back.
Well, and Ty, I don't want to put this juju out in this bad vibe out into the world, but I mean, we've seen.
Then don't. Then just don't.
Okay.
No, do it.
I was gonna say we've seen star OU quarterbacks, come back from injury and get and just get it re-aggravated against Texas. Sam Bradford's shoulder in 2009 comes to mind immediately. So you don't want to ruin the season by trying to get him back for Texas. That's my thought on it. But yeah. All right, Chris. So
it is true. I don't. Someone said in the comments, unless they gave him cybernetics, is there a law saying that we couldn't have just replaced his hand with a robot hand,
probably
like a Tesla bot hand?
I don't think the hands are good enough.
Rips and spins it.
That's true. I would like the whole arm to be replaced, actually, but that would be.
The arm can just turn into like a little cannon and it just shoots it out.
It has the two little spinning wheels, like the little practice thing that they just drop the football into.
Yeah, that's funny.
He's got a little holder that just drops the football into two little spinning wheels. And
his arm just turns into a jugs machine.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Chris. So let's go with our predictions here. Texas favored by 1.5 here. What is your pick?
I definitely pick OU to cover. You guys sort of talked me out of. I wrote if Hawkins plays, score. If Mateer plays, score. And I guess I was a lot more, optimistic on Mateer's abilities, even if slightly injured, because in my mindset, if he is out there, then that means, as Ty mentioned, it wasn't as bad as people thought, and he's okay, because there doesn't seem to be a reason why they would put him out there if it's still injured or risk of re-injury. So I think it's a very ugly defensive game, as all the points we mentioned earlier. I think if Hawkins plays, I wrote down maybe like a 17-9 OU win, where like Arch only, they go down, they get a few field goals, but
that's stinky.
But it's really gross. Yeah.
17-9, 7 of that being a pick six.
That would be even better.
One touchdown,
one offensive touchdown, 1 pick six, and a field goal.
I would believe that.
If one offensive touchdown in the entire game.
And then if Mateer plays, if I'm making the assumption that he's at least most of what he was previously, if OU is the iteration it was before Kent State, before his injury, I did say 31-10 OU. But you guys might have talked me out of Mateer, but I'm just making an assumption that if he is out there, that we get a version that's similar to earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And that's very different from what I would have said preseason, but it's not even Texas's defense. It's mostly just based off of the offense that I've seen. And it might just be one fix, but you're saying one fix is the quarterback, which is, it's very hard to fix the most important position on the field. So yeah. I did write down a few, if Texas is to win this game, a few keys. The run game looks better than it does. Short, quick passes to build Arch's confidence and also keep him from holding the ball and getting sacked a bunch of times. The defense has to look better than Florida. It literally just has to play like it did the other games of the season, albeit against crappy teams, but even how they looked against Ohio State. If it looks like they did against Ohio State, I think they have a shot, especially against Michael Hawkins. If Mateer does, for some reason, play, the key to the Texas win is he turns the ball over or he was rushed to play and he's not 100% good to go.
Yeah, there you go. I think those are those are accurate ways to look at it from, how Texas can win that game. And with Hawkins Jr. too, I do want to note, like, I feel like in most of the games we saw him play last year, he didn't really turn the ball over a ton. He was, kind of managed, but the South Carolina game was such an unmitigated disaster that the second that guy has it in him, get a little worried about that. So, but Chris, thank you for coming on, man. Always appreciate your thoughts on Texas. It helps us get a full picture of this. And this is interesting because I think this is the first year that, you're more optimistic of the Sooners than we are at this point in terms of I know it's more
not feeling great about our teams, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
It's like Freaky Friday. We flipped.
Wait, I want to try something. I want to see if mine works like Blake. Oh,
it does. the hook 'em. Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. Good deal. All right, Chris. Thanks again. Any final words? Anything you need to plug or anything, or you just
not anything I need to plug? Just OU sucks, and I enjoyed talking to you guys, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, get out of here, you rascal. All right, thank you all so much for watching another episode of the Schooner Pod, and thank you to Chris for coming on. Ty, thank you for joining me as always. Always fun to kind of, have multiple folks asking in. And I hope y'all have enjoyed this week so far. We'll be back tomorrow with the weekend spread. We have a ton of content so far. Jameson, Ty, and I covered OU Texas quite a bit at the start of the week, after this on Sunday in our Kent State recap. At the State Fair of Texas, we did a full preview of that, 2 hours. I know that sounds like a lot, but it was one of the most entertaining shows we've done all year. So, Ty, I see you raising your hand. What did you say?
Oh, we just lost him. I was going to say we need to pull him back in real quick for a postscript to ask what his favorite food item was that he was looking forward to. But I guess maybe we'll get that in the show notes or something.
Yes. Oh, we totally whiffed on that because he watched that show. He knows it. But yeah, make sure to check those out as well. They're over here. I'll link them as well. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow for the weekend spread. Have a good one. Boomer Sooner. Beat Texas, everyone.